Welcome to Disruptive Doctors podcast, host called Beyond the White Coat, the podcast that journeys into the heart of healthcare innovation, where we peel back the layers of traditional medical field to reveal the stories of doctors who dare to be different. I'm your host today, Dr. Selena, co-founder of Disruptive Doctors. Disruptive Doctors is a platform for doctors to explore all things in healthcare, from diverse careers in healthcare to tech and innovation in healthcare and entrepreneurship, business, and investment in healthcare for doctors. Now, Disruptive Doctors is on a mission to help doctors impact healthcare on a larger scale. Now, before we begin, I'd like you guys to do me a huge favor by subscribing to our channel so that we can continue to deliver amazing content to you on doctors who are impacting healthcare in different ways. Now, today, we're joined by a special guest, Dr. Raj Reghu, who is the clinical scientist with AbbVie in the United States. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Raj.
Hey, Selena. Thank you for having me.
Okay, Raj, maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about your story, your backstory, what made you decide to pursue medicine, and your journey until, your whole medical school journey.
Sure. Maybe you can probably tell by my accent, but I was actually born in Malaysia, and my family actually migrated to the States when I was quite young. Shortly after high school, I really wanted to pursue medicine. Science has always been a passion of mine, and, making a better life as a family of immigrants has instilled. So what I did was, because of the high costs, and I was still not a citizen, so it was hard to get school loans and things like that. I had a family member from Malaysia go to study medicine overseas. So that's kind of how I landed up in Russia. I was there about 6.5 years. And after studying in Russia, I joined the Malaysian batch back to going, studying and working in Malaysia. I entered housemanship, and within the first rotation, my green card that we applied for, a decade ago came through. So the timing was a little bit different, but eventually I migrated back to the States in about 2012. Where I've been ever since. So in 2012, I tried to get into residency, which is a process of entering into kind of like housemanship in Malaysia. So you have to go through a certain testing, which I've completed and passed, certain trainings, and then you kind of apply once a year for certain allotted spots. So if you don't make it that first year, you're going to have to restart and do it again. So I did a couple of rounds, and that kind of unable to get into residency. In that
the USMLE?
The USMLE is the test. They call it the boards. So the board exams are taken by everyone, including U.S. graduates. So the USMLE is one part of getting into residency. You have to have gone through an accredited med school. You would have to pass your USMLEs 1 or 2. There's 3 parts. And then usually people come in with from overseas with other credentials to kind of make them stand out. Because like I said, there's certain spots open. It's not one of those things where, everyone can enter and they'll be able to find spots around the hospitals in the U.S.
So if I heard you correctly, you're saying that even though you've passed your USMLE, it doesn't mean that you get a job or
yes
program in US to become a doctor.
Exactly. Because there are only a handful of spots, essentially, you're competing with the US graduates and then everyone that's coming into the States applying for those remainder spots. So it's very competitive, and I knew that coming in. I actually did all my USMLEs and boards while I was studying, because that was kind of my end goal, is to get into residency in the U.S. So I even though I had a game plan, prepped everything out, passed my exams, did all the extra work that I could to stand out as an applicant, it was still pretty difficult to get in.
Wow. So, for us, Malaysians here, we think that, maybe becoming a doctor abroad would be greener pastures. You get training programs, you get to get into, all this hospitals easily, but it seems like that's not the case. So do you know what's the percentage for international graduates to get into, a residency program in US?
I can get that information probably after the call, but it's not as high as someone would think. Even for the U.S. graduates, you would think that 100% get in. It's actually less than that. It's not a guaranteed spot even for the U.S. graduates. So again, it's the number of spots is the limiting factor, and then you're competing against 1,000 people for maybe one spot in a hospital. There's only a certain number of residency hospitals per state across the 50 states. So it's not like, they're popping up, another hospital right down the street, So it's a very controlled system of residency spots.
Wow. All right. So now you're in AbbVie. Tell us about this journey. I know you tried a lot of different jobs before you finally landed this one. So what was the journey like?
Yeah, it was, once I failed to get into residency, it was a period of my life, like trying to figure out what can I do with my degree here. So it landed me in certain things. So one of them was, I worked under a physician running her office, clinical practice. Another job that I did was as a clinical research coordinator at a VA hospital. VAs are veterans. So it's a veteran hospital. And that actually landed me into getting connections and, building some networkings that allowed me to get into the pharma industry. It's a bit difficult to get in if you don't have, much background or experience. But, these previous experiences actually helped me get into where I am today.
Okay, can you explain a bit about the clinical coordinator job that you had? Like, because here, we don't have we were not trained or taught of the many various opportunities where you can actually utilize your medical degree. So can you share a little bit about that clinical coordinator job?
Yeah, it was actually something I never heard of when I got in. It happened by circumstances that was actually out of my control. I was working under a physician to get some publications to help with my residency. And that particular physician had a coordinator under him running clinical trials for a big pharma company. So the coordinators are kind of like the soldiers for the clinical trials. They're the ones who's collecting data. They're the ones who's organizing everything that the clinical trial is requiring in order to, make sure it's a successful trial. So after I found out that he was leaving, and again, I didn't know what a coordinator was. I was just, desperate for any job. So he got me into this position as a coordinator, and that's kind of where I learned about clinical trials, how to conduct them, what kind of pharma companies are doing these kind of trials. I was working on several across the VA hospital, the Veterans Hospital. So that's kind of like where I landed. It was pretty much by, again, networking. It's really important to not be vulnerable, but open yourself up for opportunities because in a clinical space like, med school and working in a hospital, you don't see all of these different avenues.
Okay, like how long were you struggling to find something after you completed your USMLE, you tried to apply for residency? Like how long was the struggle
It took a few years. Let's say so I got in about 2012 is when I migrated. So within, every intake is once a year. So I did 2 intakes. So after the second year, that's when I had to kind of look around and see where I can go. So within a year or so, I was working at the clinical office, and then another year at the Veterans Hospital as a coordinator. And then that third year is where, there was a spark where I was able to find a friend of mine that was working at the pharma company that I eventually ended up in. And because of that connection, I was able to get an interview, and based on that, here I am.
Okay, what's the job that you're currently doing right now?
Yeah, so at AbbVie, I'm a clinical scientist, so that falls under the umbrella of a R&D, research and design. So these are the group of people who are gathering information to create that next generation product or drug. So my team are comprised of scientists. They're mainly either MDs or PhDs or PharmDs. I'm actually working with the same people that I, went to school with pretty much. They're science focused, very inquisitive. It's a great learning environment. I'm learning something new every single day. Working under a great organization. It's a large company, but it's nice to kind of go back to my original fundamentals of, being in science and learning new things and helping people, but in a different way than I traditionally thought I would be ending up as.
Well, I actually like that concept that you said that you could continue to, go back to your roots, what you enjoyed, which was the science of it. And the other part was how you can still help people, but in a different context.
Yeah, I mean, the products that we develop are affecting hundreds or millions of people. So it's you see a large impact that you make working in places like this, and obviously it's not an apples to apples comparison from clinical work, but again, it's that feeling of wanting to help and just trying to do what you did in the beginning.
Okay, was there any stigma? Like, did you feel any internal conflict or any stigma from your family? Because, you went to medical school,
Yeah.
you did USMLE, you're a doctor, but you're not treating patients.
Yeah, I think I initially had that because I went to school overseas with an international group, including, all of Southeast Asia, so Indians, Malaysians, Middle Eastern. So we always had that mindset is you go to school, you work as a doctor, you come home and, repeat. So when I, unable to get into residency, it was a bit of turmoil figuring out like, what do I do? And I didn't have a lot of, close friends that are in the same position as I was. I mean, I would love it if I had something like your company, like Disruptive Doctors, where we can branch and lean on to other people and see what they're doing, and get some advice. So, I mean, I'm a big advocate of just trying to network and, belong in an organization like yours to really help you grow into things that you've never seen before. Because that's how I was able to succeed to where I am right now. Is just pretty much by other people helping me.
Well, yeah, I mean, to go far, you have to go as a team, right?
Yeah.
So you earlier mentioned that now currently all your colleagues, the people you're working with now, they are all your schoolmates or classmates?
Yeah, as in figuratively, these are the type of people that I went to school with. They're very inquisitive. They're always wanting to learn new things. Technically speaking, they are doctors. Either they came straight from university or they did practice and then they got into the pharma industry. I have a lot of my organizations are filled with people who have clinical practice experience, but pivoted and went into the pharma industry.
So are there many doctors in the US that do this? Or is this something out of the norm?
I've been in the industry for about 5 years. So based on my experience, I feel like it's a growing industry that is attracting I wouldn't say just doctors, but just people who have come from untraditional backgrounds. So it's not like a set criteria of who ends up in pharma. I see a lot of people with interesting stories and background, but the common theme is, they're very inquisitive. They want to help. They want to excel in both their careers, but other people as well. But Yeah, it's I see a lot more MDs coming in as well. The nature of clinical work maybe not as appealing as it used to be. And the industry is, growing so fast. It's a huge company, and the benefits that comes from working with the well-known companies there as well. So I think that's also attracting a lot of talent into this field.
Okay, what do you think, what would you say is the most important thing for a doctor to succeed in this industry, in pharmaceuticals?
I think those are the same characteristics of what makes a good doctor. I mean, if you thought of people that you worked with, and your mentors, or or maybe a colleague, those same characteristics carry over to this field or in R&D, especially in the pharma side. So as long as you work hard, again, you're inquisitive, you're asking the right questions, you want to help, the end goal is to, help as many people as you can. And working with others, that's probably one of the most important thing, is that you can be the smartest guy in the room, but if no one likes you, no one's going to work with you, right? So all of these factors that we already have built in working in med school, going through med school, studying, working in the clinical industry, that it just translates so well, going into the pharma industry.
Okay, so for doctors who are thinking of transitioning, right, from their clinical practice to a non-clinical career like yours, like into the pharma industry, so what would you say, what would you advise the young doctors?
I would say, I think first it's like just believe in yourself, because it was really hard to make that shift from I'm going to be a doctor working with patients to I'm going to be going out in a field that I don't know anything about. So I think the first thing is like believe in yourself, and two is leverage the people around you, disruptive doctors or organizations that kind of just help other people out going through the same motion, because you're not alone. I thought I was the only one getting in, but when I have been in this industry for a while, there's almost everyone that I meet has a similar background like me. They started in one direction and ended up somewhere else, and they're happier for it too. So it's believe in yourself, leverage your connections, and also be open-minded, because there's opportunities out there, but you just don't how do you say, don't close the doors just because it's uncomfortable or you don't know anything about it. Just be open-minded.
Okay, well, I think our journey is almost similar, because being an entrepreneur, starting a business is the last thing I wanted to do. I remember I was so focused. I thought I was going to be an intensivist. I remember telling a colleague of mine that, because he was doing business on the side, and I'm like, what would you do business? It's so boring. It's medicine is so interesting. That is the way to go. So 5 years on, if I'm going to see him again, this is going to be like such an interesting conversation, because he was thinking of getting into business, but now he's a specialist. He's an NS specialist, but now I am no longer practicing, and I'm in entrepreneurship. So yeah, this is definitely something I did not see coming. And I like how you said that things are dynamic. Sometimes what you want may not be where you end up, and that's okay. And be open-minded to accepting change, and just pivoting, changing your sales, having a new plan, going ahead with it. So I can see that you did all of that.
Yeah, and probably something I would add is, always try to upskill, learn new things. Again, I went through your website recently, so I just noticed a lot of things that people can actually learn for free, by the way. And that's it. Again, that's also another tool that maybe it doesn't come to mind easily as a former physician, because you're always like, okay, I need to learn ABC, this paradigm and this diagnostics and blah, blah, blah. But if you get out of your scope a little bit and see what else is for people doing, then maybe that also will help. But long story short, just learning to upskill yourself and is always going to be beneficial, especially if you're going into another industry.
What was the one skill that you had to pick up?
I think it's a lot of managing expectations, communicating to different people, meaning, we are used to talking to a clinician, straightforward, direct, quickly, and maybe
Don't waste my
emotion
time.
aside, right? So I think in business in general, it's a lot of communications, but it's also, you want to convey what you want to do, but at the same time, there's a certain way to do it. There's a certain way to talk. There's a certain way to act. And that's really important when it comes to the business side of the life. So that's probably one of the things that I had a little bit of hard time dealing with in the beginning, because that's something I'm not used to. But, training, experience, time, all that will, help you get to those things.
Actually, I do agree with you, regarding this communication part, because when you're in a hospital, you talk to patients and they have no choice. The patients have no choice. They are in a desperate situation. So you come in, I'm a doctor, so I just do whatever I want, right? I speak however I want. And you don't think about how what you say affect the other person, right? For you, it's just, I just want to get my job done. So I have heard a lot of complaints from people who were on the receiving side. Like after I left medicine and I started interacting with the common public, people are complaining about how doctors have no empathy, and the communication is so it's so brash,
It's harsh. It's straight to the point. It could cut you like a knife. But I agree. It's even I've seen the hospital system in several countries, U.S. And Malaysia, and even though they're quite different in some aspects, the bottom line is, like, if you do not make that person feel heard, or you're not listening to their needs, however good doctor you are, it's probably, they're not probably going to go back to you, and they're probably going to have a negative attitude, and it's a cycle. It's really important to just have that good communication skill, but at the same time, like, learn how to be a human when you're interacting with other people, and that that translates so well in this industry.
Okay, how has that helped you, this new way of communicating and managing expectation? How has that helped you in your current career in the pharma industry?
It helped me slow down, because the thing that's really different about working in a corporate environment versus the hospital is whatever I need that day, it's not life critical. Like, if I miss it, it's, if I was a physician, I might hurt someone, or, something really bad could happen right away. But there are, if I swap to the business side of things, or in the pharma industry, that you need time to react. You don't want to be very impulsive. So you need time to just think, ask questions when you need to ask them, and then, process the information and execute. I think that's one big difference, is just not like you're alone, you got to make a quick decision, go for it. In the pharma side, it's, you're working with literally hundreds of people sometimes. So that communication of things need to be get done quickly, yeah, that happens, but you're working with a lot of people, so you can't just be a lone ranger and just do whatever you want. So I think that was really a really key thing to understand, is like, learn how to work with people, and that's going to take you away a long way.
Okay, thanks, Raj. Actually, this is it's very, very insightful even for me. Is there any last words you want to share with our audience, or the young doctors, or doctors who are listening to this?
Yeah, looking back, when I first started and migrated back to the country, it's just, something I repeated before is just believe in yourself and know that you're not alone. There's a great group of people around you, and that's how you got through med school. You went through clinicals, the space. So there's always family, friends that are around you. Just don't forget to include them when you're having this big transition in life, because that could actually make it easier to do so. The importance of working with organizations like yourself. There's people that's gone through this, so why not leverage their knowledge? You're probably going to be saving a lot of time. I know I would save a few years if I had a company like yours to kind of have that people and that mindset of we've done this, this is how you want to do it, all of that. And then, just leverage, open, how do I say it? Be open-minded, open to new opportunities. So what you think now might be totally different in 2 years' time. So just be open to opportunities and just go for it.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Raj. Now that wraps up another episode of Post Call Beyond the White Coat. A huge thank you to Dr. Raj Reghu for sharing his inspiring story with us today. How doctors can continue to impact healthcare in many ways. So, guys, Dr. Reghu did mention about the Disruptive Doctors community. So be sure to become our premium member and be part of the Disruptive Doctor community, and follow us on your favorite podcast platform for more stories like Dr. Raj. So join us the next time as we continue to go beyond the white coat. This is Dr. Selena from Disruptive Doctors signing off.